Next presenter, John Dickerson with Quillo. John and I have known each other for quite a lot of years, true expert in the industry, and super excited about what he's been doing at Quillo, kind of tying in our last presentation and DSP shortages that I'm sure is going to be coming up across the entire day for obvious reasons. I think they've got some really great solutions, so I'm not going to steal your thunder. I'll give it over to John.
Great. Well, thank you, Dustin, and thank you all for coming here. And it really is pretty distracting. You guys are facing this way, it's great. But when you see these moving pictures of yourself back there, it's like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? What a great presentation. I want to tell you a rest assured story. Quick story, because Ken was asking about stories. I happened to be around when Rest Assured was first being tested. And they first came to me and said, we're thinking about remote support. Or of course, we called it something different then. And they tested it with 4 guys in a group home. And I happen to know these 4 guys up in Lafayette. And after about 2 months, we talked to them. And I was up there sitting with them. And you know, one of the guys looked at me and I said, Fred? And for those of you that are HIPAA police in here, Fred is not his real name. I get in trouble for this. I'll go to HIPAA jail, I'm sure. Fred, what do you think about this? And you know what he said to me? And I've never met Ken. We've not talked yet. He said, the guy that speaks to me in the wall isn't as bossy as the staff that were here with me all the time. It's interesting. Refer to a family that I know that has 2, those of you that are Indiana providers, that has 2 young women that have their own home. Both are Algo 5s, you know, for whatever that means. And I don't think it means a whole lot. Both are Algo 5s. They had trouble with that late shift. They put in Rest Assured. Both women have done marvelously. What everybody had to get over was their habit of compliance. How do we be safe? And it was more how do they be safe as an agency than it was how we be safe for the 2 women involved. So please visit with folks and visit with Ken as we think about this. Leslie Green isn't here, but some folks from Stone Belt are. About 3 years ago, we were sitting down and she challenged me. And she said, John, we need to think differently on this workforce issue. I don't know what we need to do, but we got to think differently, and we need to do something. Because we raise wages and we still have turnover. One year we think we're doing really well and we get it below 40%, and the next year it's up to 55%. We've got to do something differently. So I spent 2 years talking to smart people, both in our field and outside. And then looked at a lot of the research and the writing, because every business in America is dealing with retention and trying to figure out, we don't have enough workers, folks. We don't have enough live bodies to keep our economy growing at the rate it needs to grow. So what are we going to do? Are we going to keep doing the same thing we've always done and face high turnover, or are we going to think differently about it? So we started Quillo with the idea that we can do some things differently. And Quillo is a solution based on stories. Let's see if we can get this to work for us. We found in our market research, and we interviewed DSPs, first-line managers all across the country, and found out that 80% of their communication with their supervisor was on the device you're holding in your hand right now. Some of you may be communicating with staff back home. And what's going on? Now, if you've been here a couple of hours, odds are you've already gotten a text, email, or a call from work. What has that call been? 70% of the time it's negative. And that's what the DSPs are getting. They are getting contacted when there's a problem, not when something good is going on. They're not being encouraged. They're not being supported the way they want. So it leads to this turnover. And what's the cost of turnover? It's reported we're about 45% nationwide. As I've now been working with providers more intimately on this, I think it's much more higher than that, because we lump them all together with administrative and day program, But if you look just at the residential side where 80% of our staff are, we're seeing it's significant. Anchor estimates that it's about $5,000 to replace a person. $5,000 to replace a person. That's considering recruiting, screening, training, and overtime you pay. That means in our system, we're spending $13 billion a year in a $90 billion system just on turnover. I was a lobbyist for 40 years. If we could get the Indiana General Assembly, I think Steve had to leave, to give us our share of $13 billion of new money, what would that mean? How do we attack this problem? We looked at it, the Quillo solution is that we've got to change the culture of what we're doing. And I will tell you right now, changing culture is hard. If you're looking for a software solution that's easy, that promises you plug it in, it does everything for you, and including making your coffee, this isn't it. And there aren't many out there. But if you're looking for something that is a powerful tool that'll help you improve your culture, build on a good culture, build on positive communication. So we're a platform that is all based on positive psychology. Why do people stay? They like what they're doing, they like who they're doing with, they feel acknowledged, they feel valued. You're nodding your head. When was the last time you got an acknowledgement from somebody that told you how well you were doing? What'd that mean to you? It means everything. Compare that to how often somebody comes up to you. What's your name, by the way? Carmela? How often does somebody come up to you and say, Carmela, we have a problem. We got to work on it. Often. So folks are out there. We also found that when they're distant, they don't feel connected. They don't feel part of the organization. Everything we do is based on two thoughts: positive psychology and personal well-being. It's based around the idea of short 60-second videos. Why videos? Because we're aiming for an emotional connection to the why of what you're doing. When we quiz staff about what is most of our training, health, compliance, safety. All important, all absolutely important. But when do we get to the why of what we're doing? How many of you remember the very first person with a disability you worked with? Flashback. What was that story? What was that person's life that touched you? What did that mean to you? Have you ever shared that with any of your staff? Have you talked to them about how it's going to change their life in this work and give meaning? We do a fresh daily feed out to their smart devices from you that is labeled from you that connects them with the why of what they're doing. Sometimes it's a funny story. There's a great one that Tyler did down at Stone Belt. Talking about months. He had this young man that every day he'd ask him and say, "Hi, David. My name's Tyler. How you doing?" And Tyler would just repeat back to him and say, "Hi, David. My name's Tyler. How are you?" Did Tyler give up? He did it over and over again, and months later, finally, David said to him, "Hi, Tyler. My name's David. How are you doing?" And David said, "Hi, Tyler. I'm doing good." How do we get that inspiration to folks? This is what the app looks like. Every day is a daily focus that comes from us or from you. What people love seeing is you. They love hearing your stories. They want to get to know Bitta. And with over 500 staff, how do they get to know her? How much time does she have to get to know a new staff member? How much time do you have? And when we talk about well-being, what's today? Anybody know what today is? Today is a National Day of Significance. Anybody? Real quick. Anybody? Yes. It is that, which is important. It's also National Awareness on Domestic Abuse, which is what I was looking for. But deep dish pizza, 70% of our workforce is women. 1 out of 5 women is living in an abusive relationship. The lower their income, that rate goes up. What does that mean for our workforce about their well-being? 80% of women who are in an abusive relationship will not talk about it. How does that impact your workforce? We have a whole series put on by experts in domestic abuse. 1-minute things that, how do you help someone you're worried about? Because if you press too much, they'll just shut down and not talk to you about it. So we have a daily focus. They get a fresh set every day of new content, all short. They can watch it. Why is it 60 seconds? Most people quit listening after about 60 seconds. So already 3/4 of you have started thinking about deep dish pizza instead of what I'm saying. But the idea is short, cumulative micro-learning can be extremely effective in building culture. Second area is shared experience. What can you do together? Ken's question of why are staff here? What do we do together that's enriching, that helps people explore? One of the questions we ask in the videos a lot is, ask yourself and the people you support, what brings them joy? Do we ever ask that? And what brings them joy? Let's do more of that. The last section is called Take a Moment. And that take a moment is always about personal well-being. How do you take care of yourself? How do you as a caregiver take care of themselves? I was interviewing a DSP in Virginia, and I'll just ask you to think about this. She had worked for an agency for 6 years. She loved her work. She also had a 12-year-old daughter with Down syndrome. She told me, I've never told anybody in this organization that I have a daughter with Down syndrome. I didn't think anybody would care. I happen to know that executive director. I asked her permission. I said, can I call him and talk to him and tell him about you? Happened to be an ARC. I worked 42 years for the ARC. I called him out and he said, just take me outside and hit me with a brick. Why would she not think we were interested in her child? Because every one of our trainings was about compliance, coverage, health, and safety, not about her. You know what they did in their agency? They went around and they found out they had about 800 employees. They found they had 120 that have sons and daughters, brothers, sisters with disabilities. So they offered a special seminar for just their staff that had family members with disabilities. 150 people came on a Saturday. It was unpaid time. They were expressing an interest in the well-being of their staff. So Quillo, where does our content come from? It comes from us. We have a library currently about 600 videos. We add all the time. Then our subscribers have now done up over 250 videos themselves. And then we have trainers now that are coming into agencies and are doing follow-up. You ever think about you bring a very expensive trainer in for a day and you bring them into staff? How do you sustain that? So we have an event going on out in California right now where the trainer is going to record 20 one-minute videos to follow up on that training. And they're going to send them out 2 a week for the next 10 weeks, just to remind people about the concepts that are in there. We've looked at retention, and we created this little visual for you. As we look at this issue, we're talking about a culture that is based on well-being, not a culture on compliance, not a culture based on billing, not a culture based on health and safety. All of those are important. But if you want to keep staff and you want to keep them engaged, how do you communicate that culture around well-being for them and the people we support? And it has 4 key parts of it. Relationships. How do you build those relationships when we have no time? The reason we don't talk positives with staff is everybody says they're busy. Somebody asked our panel, what are the key things that are obstacles? I would say it's time, and then the second one, habits. How do we change our habits? How do we get you who are already busy to spend 15 minutes a day on positive acknowledgement of staff? How do you do that? How do you get all of your staff to share that positive messaging back with folks? A friend of mine at CQL told me they often do as one of their exit interviews, they'll have a table of 4 staff sitting around there and they say, what are the 5 biggest achievements that you've seen in people with disabilities in the last year? And this is with DSPs. What do you think their answers are? First question is they struggle with it because we never talk to them about our achievements. We talk about our problems. The third one, as we looked at, is processes. How do our processes support the why of what we're here? Do they really do it? When Ken was asked that question, why do we have staff? That's a process. Why are we having this meeting? Why are we doing this? And then communicating that why back to it. We've done some research on our users. We're only a year old. We launched last March. And it is getting it's hard to get them to use a new habit. It is really a minute a day. We're asking you to invest a minute in your day to look at a video and take a smile from it. 23% of our users said it improves the relationship with their supervisor. They felt better about who they worked for. 29%, they felt closer to the organization, more connected to the why of what they're doing. And this one really astounded us. 65% said it improved the relationship with the people they support. They began seeing them. I didn't show you videos on purpose here, but I'm going to talk about a few. But first, think about this on the results. If you're a 300-employee organization, you have a retention rate of 40%. That means you need to recruit 180 new staff a year. If you can move that to a 60% retention rate, that means you need to recruit 45 fewer people by upping your retention by 20%. You just saved $250,000. How much time is it worth you to go after $250,000? If Kylie announced today there's a new $250,000 grant available, how many of you would ask, how do I apply? How much time would you spend on it? This is money that's invisible to us as we look at it. Think about being able to reinforce a message to your staff every day. What would you say to them? What would you say if you could have coffee with all your staff once a day? It takes some thought, it takes some consideration. Some of them are inspirational. Let me tell you real quick. Anybody wants, we'll give you a free password. You can get on the app and play with it. So I'm not going to show videos with you. One guy did one. Let me ask you this real simple question. Do you look at the people you support as a math problem or a sunset? Think about that for a moment. Do you look at the people you support as someone that is a problem that needs to be solved, or a sunset that is this beautiful experience that's different every day? As you look at that, that's a thing and a concept anybody can begin to grasp as we begin thinking about it. And it's not one message, but it's the cumulative effect of what we do. And you know what the interesting effect it has on you and the rest of your management team? It's just up in Chicago, and one of our largest provider in the state of Illinois. And they just had the night at the Quillo Academy Awards, where they had 150 videos done by their staff, and they gave Best Actor, Best Supporting Actor, Best Animation. Everybody loved it. And now they're competing to get the award for next year. But when everybody came up to get their award, you know what the common theme was? Doing this has changed me as I think about being positive, as opposed to always focusing on the problems that we face. Lord knows we have a lot of problems. And I'll end with one story on habits, because I think I'm about out of time. Okay. When we think about habits, habits are things we do without thinking about it. Faced with a situation, we tend to resort back to old habits, even if we know they don't work. Wonderful new book. It's called The Power of Habits. If you're interested, pick it up at the library. It's a great book. Talking about habits and how do we change these if we're going to do it. When Ken was talking about this issue of why are we doing what we're doing? Because it's a habit. It's something that we do over and over again, a lot of times without thinking. How do we break a habit? It takes leaders that support that. It takes leaders that say, we need you to try this, and I'm going to do it myself. You know, I'll pick on Kylie because I know her well. She often has to call providers when there is a problem. What if she called you up, and who's a provider I don't know that I could talk to here for a second, too? Your name, sir. Red shirt and red tie. What's your name? Mike. Okay, who are you with? Peak Community Services, Chris Neighbors' group. Great. Glad you're here. What happened if Kylie called you up, Mike, and said, I just heard a great story about something Peak was doing. I'm just saying congratulations. Would love it. You might pick yourself off the floor, because the first thing usually is, Here's a problem we got. What are we going to do? Now, let me challenge you. Mike, have you ever called Kylie and told her, or Kathy? Where's Kathy? Right there. Called them and said, hey, I want to tell you this wonderful success story, and it's because you guys have done these things that have made a difference. Doesn't happen. Doesn't happen very often, does it? Yeah. We have got to change the culture throughout everything we do, and it includes with our staff. We'd love to have you try out Quillo. Stop by and talk to Sue Gordon. Sue's our COO. She's here in the back. Check out the other folks. The folks in the Good Life table. I learned about them. The Connect to Voice folks. You've got people here that'll help you change what you're doing, but you got to change some habits and be open to do it. Lastly, I want to thank Dustin. He's taken a huge leap of moving into this field that a lot of people are scared about. Technology is scary for a lot of folks. How do we do it? Start by learning from Dustin and folks that are already making that change. Some things will work, some things won't. But one thing's for certain, if we don't change, we're going to keep getting the same results. Do I have a minute or two for any questions? Real quick. Yes. Anybody? Tell a little story on her, Beth Eiler over at Dungarvan. She's scared now. First time we talked about getting her on camera, scared to death, scared to death. But now they're doing videos and they're powerful and people want to see them. Yes? Absolutely. We built it so it's so easy. You can record on your phone and within an hour it's out to your staff. You could catch somebody doing something cool and begin moving that out to folks. And you get a dashboard, you know who's watching, when they're watching, what are the favorite ones, and all the pieces and analytics you want to come with it. But it's about simple, inexpensive videos. Yes?
If people engage with the videos, like if they're a group of staff and they all kind of chat about it?
We don't have that feature now within the app. We've been asked for that. We've really been leery of that because we don't want to become Facebook. We allow people to like a video, they can create it to a playlist and save it. We don't let them give a thumbs down. So you put your heart into telling a story. Do you want some anonymous group of people to give you thumbs down? We're not. And Facebook has become a place to argue. So it's a very moderated environment. We want to keep that positive culture going. You approve who's on it, who's not on it. And we've asked for how to have a commentary, and we're exploring it, but it has to be moderated. So if somebody, say you're our customer admin, somebody writes a thing, we want you to approve it before it goes out there. Because we have some people that do like putting negative things out, and we've got to work against that. Great. Thank you so much for coming here and exploring and stretching this zone. Dustin, thank you. Sorry I went over.
No, you're fine. Good job. Thank you. Thanks, John.